the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
AVWeek is produced and distributed through a partnership with AVNation and Rave Publications. For more information, go to ravepubs.com/AVNation. This is AVWeek, episode 21 for December 23rd, 2011. Best of.
Ready.
AVWeek.
Performing scan.
Week.
Online.
This is AVWeek. AVWeek. Welcome to this edition of AVWeek. This has been a really, really great start to AV Nation with the launch of AVWeek. I'm continue to be humbled and surprised at the number of people who listen to this and who are impacted by it and who actually learn something or at least are entertained by it. We started with a very simple concept, audio-visual news and information for the AV industry, presented in, hopefully, an entertaining way. I think that we've done that. I hope at least that we've done that. And now that we've partnered with Rave Publications and Gary Kay and Sarah and the gang over there, watch out for next year. I mean, seriously, there really is no limit to what we can do and what we can provide you, the audience. So, thank you. And thank you, and thank to everybody. Thanks to Gary and Rave and all the guests and all the panelists, Julie Jacobson and Sam Malik and everybody who has agreed to come on and help us, and lend their voice to an industry that all of us here absolutely love and absolutely are passionate about. One of the clips you're going to hear is Dawn Mead and her Preach It blog that she wrote, and we talked about some. That passion is actually what I love about this industry, because people in it are that passionate for the most part. So right now, let's take a look back at the last 6 months, the first 6 months of AV Nation and AVWeek. Our very first episode featured AV writer Linda Sid Frembes, George Tucker, and Michael Drainer. We kind of started out the show and started out this whole thing, wrapping up Infocom 2011. This is AV Week, episode 0000, Friday, July 29th, 2011. Linda, we'll start with you. What was something that just wowed you at Infocom this year?
Well, I'll put a caveat on my selection, only because if anyone was actually at the show, you'll know that it would take more than those 3 days to see everything at the show. So I don't want anyone to feel slighted. But my favorite thing was the InFocus Mondo Pad. That I thought it sort of combines all the things I think our industry has been going towards with interactivity, collaboration, conferencing, and it was just really an impressive piece of technology.
Now, for somebody who didn't see it, because I actually missed that one, what is the InFocus Mondo Pad?
Well, you can probably go to the InFocus site, and that'll explain it better than I can. But just think of a 55-inch LCD, full 1080p tablet.
Ooh, wow.
That can be used for conferencing. So, I mean, again, it's just one of those, to me, it just sort of tied together all the things that, from my perspective, from someone who writes about this industry, it's all the things that we've been talking about, right? So we've been talking about unified communication, collaboration, interactivity, touch panels. I mean, it's all of these things combined into a 55-inch LCD.
That is sexy. A 55-inch touch panel. I like that. George, what is your one or two things that kind of blew you away?
I went a little more practical. I was really impressed by the AMX, the panoramic panels that they were putting out. I'm unsure if these are new or not, but I've never seen them before, and they really wowed me, the way they move and the way they feel. when it's done as like a tabletop, it really reminded me of the old, was it Bang & Olufsen BO Sound CD players?
Oh, wow.
Remember
yeah.
those?
Mm-hmm.
Very elegant looking, yet practical, yet something unique enough that you just want to touch. And I like just how it had that practicality from everything from conference rooms to a home use. It just really flowed very nicely with all the way that you could swipe stuff and just how it laid out.
So this is the edgeless touch panel.
Yeah, they call the Madero X's, I believe. They're like 19-something inches. They're kind of ungainly looking, but I really do like them. The minute I saw it, I wanted to touch it. It just, and having been around touch panels for more than I care to admit, it just really wowed me. And I was like, it wasn't an iPad moment, but it really was wow. I'd love to be able to find a way to put that in somewhere.
And there's something to be said for that, because companies like Extron and Crestron and AMX and Aurora, sometimes they have a difficult time coming out with another wow touch panel, because so often is the time. For the past few years, it's been it's a touch panel. It does what it does. It's almost like a utility truck. And
right.
to see something like that, you're right. Something that's sexy and something that it just kind of grabs your attention and makes you want to touch it for the end user is huge.
Yeah, I mean, that's what iPad did, really, too. I mean, it was like, hey, it's wireless, it's thin. Wow, that looks so cool. And I think this has a similar effect for those installs where a dedicated proprietary panel is really necessary. And there are those cases, where you don't want something that you're not sure if it'll last the use and abuse that a public causeway would have or something.
Yeah.
The other one that I really liked, which is not quite on the install side, since I'm on the staging and live events side nowadays, is a company called Dataton. Dataton is a Swedish company that started off doing show control, which was back in the old slide days when you did multimedia, when that meant, sound and slides. Mm-hmm. And they have actually morphed into a masking, soft image mapping company with a product called WatchOut. And it uses, in the old days, it used multiple computers to do each segment of the screen. So if you're familiar with this process, in the old days, you used to use the shutters on your projectors with certain material feeding it to make the edge blends. You can only do it on a flat screen. Well, nowadays, you can do it on curved screens and oddly shaped screens and multiple locations. And what Dataton has done is stepped it up, and they now allow one computer to do multiple screens, and they allow a stereoscopic, almost 3D imagery. It requires glasses, but it actually looks pretty cool. Oh, and wow. The really cool part is they do now something called enhanced live interaction. All right, it's a marketing name. But how they showed it was they took an iPad, controlling this WatchOut computer, but then took an iPad, took a picture of the crowd, and it showed up on screen within about 15 seconds.
Wow.
And it was and the 15 seconds was because it was so dense at Infocom with RF. If you have any of those little RF readers, which I carry around, it was just dense, packed. So they say typically it would take, a couple of seconds, and they used it like a Polaroid. Polaroid would come out of this camera, take time to develop, and there was your image.
That is,
but it's a really nifty.
They actually use this technology on the U2 360 tour.
Yes, that's right. They do.
Where they're taking pictures of the audience while it's happening, and then throwing up on the screens.
Yeah, and this is one of those things that does that, and it does it live interaction for audience reaction and polls.
Oh wow!
So you can have audience members, hitting a button or an audience feedback thing, and it'll show instantly up on the screen with like meters or some kind of graphic representation of those numbers.
So instant feedback from the audience themselves. Wow, there's a lot of use for that.
Yeah, and there's a few companies out there that do similar things like Pandora and Hypnotizer and all those guys, but this really sort of steps it up with the interactivity.
All right, Mr. Integrator, Michael, what was your one or two things?
Coming from the integration side of things, we do a lot in the video conferencing world, and I was thoroughly impressed with Polycom's new Eagle Eye Director system. Had the dual high-definition cameras with the ribbon microphone, full facial recognition, and what I found amazing by this is it really increases the simplicity of deploying multi-camera video conferencing in a collaborative environment. So did any of you guys get a chance to see that, the Polycom stuff?
No.
No, I didn't get a chance.
So imagine a technical director inside the codec, and that's really what it is. So camera number one will pick the person that's talking, and in traditional video conferencing environments, when the next person starts talking, the camera would shift and it would make you dizzy, all that kind of stuff. But now the second camera will pick the next talker, then it will do a cut to the person that's speaking at that moment in time. So it really creates a continuous collaborative type flow in the video presentation.
Now, is that done with microphone recognition, or how is that?
What's interesting about it is the microphone. You know, in traditional deployments, you'd have a microphone in front of each speaker at the conference table. And so you'd have a digital signal processor or something that would determine who's talking, and you'd have a preset that tells the camera where to go. But with this technology, the microphone is at the camera's location, and it picks up the direction of that voice, and then the software in the codec recognizes who's talking with its facial recognition software, locks onto that individual, and then makes the cut.
Interesting. All right, I guess it's my turn. My number one, and this is only because of sending HD down a single pipe, down a single piece of Cat5 or twisted pair, really, not Cat5, and that is Crestron's DM MPS. It's not because it's that box, it's just because that's like one of the first boxes that has everything built into it from a control system and from an HD distribution system. Everybody knows the issues that the industry has with HDCP and with sending high definition content over longer distances. I mean, anything over 100 feet or so, then you're going to start getting into some issues. And the MPS is just their digital media MPS, which, if you're not familiar with their MPS series, it is a video mixer, it's an audio mixer, it's a control processor, all kind of mixed into one box. And then you've got, you throw the DM stuff on top of that, which DM is Crestron's version of HD over a single piece of twisted pair. Extron has it, AMX has it, a bunch of people have it. This just happens to be theirs. And I think it's cool because it's one that's actually coming out in the next 6 months. Nothing against anybody else, but and this is something Linda and I have talked about before. I'm a big fan of if you're going to show something at a trade show, you kind of might want to have it out at least shipping in the next, at least by the time the next trade show comes out. That's just me. That's just me.
It's always helpful.
I hear you feel very strongly about that.
I do. And you know what? It's me as an end user. I mean, that really is. I mean, I design and I program, but when it comes down to it, I'm kind of an end user. And so when I see something, I mean, I'm a guy and I like electronics. If I see something and it works, I want it, and I want it now. I don't want it in a year or 2 years, or I don't want you to show me this exact same box next year at InfoComm in Vegas.
Well, and you're not alone in that world as the end user, because from the integration standpoint, it becomes an absolute nightmare. And I have multiple conversations with my manufacturers and my rep firms about just this about this topic particular. Don't tell me you've got this latest and greatest technology and then not deliver it for 6 months, 8 months, 10 months. You better deliver on what you say you're going to deliver, because I have to design my systems around that. How many times, Tim, do we get together on a project and we have we build this design based on a technology that's supposed to be released and it's supposed to be shipping, and then we end up having to revamp the entire design by the time deployment comes around? It's an absolute nightmare.
It is, and it's unfortunate for the end users who go, this is something really cool, and especially I understand designing 12 months out, but we're working in an industry now that, especially with digital and how fast things move, that 12 months is a lifetime. I mean, how much stuff, guys, in the last 12 months has changed when it comes to digital and HDCP and everything. So if you're a designer, or even an integrator who does a design build, designing 12 months out almost is suicide, I think.
But I think too, it's more of a, for me, I see it more of as a marketing thing, because if you announce something that the market doesn't have, you are technically first to market. So it's not that it doesn't matter, but in that very moment, it doesn't matter. The end users, they're not thinking of the end users, because for me, it's, from my perspective, it's a marketing thing.
But are you first to market? And I understand the marketing part, but are you first to market then if you're not shipping it?
Oh, those are just tiny little details. About shush.
Jeez, I give up. All right.
Hey, so I have a question for the group, actually, that's based on some of the description you had about the HDCP stuff.
Yes.
I know there's a lot of boxes out there now saying, you don't need that. You don't need the HDCP. And from what I've been reading, and granted it's on the internet, so we'll take it for what it's worth.
It's all true.
Exactly. There are a number of products out there saying, you don't need to worry about that. We just bypass it. And, if you read the HDMI.org, licensing rules, they say you must have this and you must be aware of it and recognize it and acknowledge it. But there's a lot of products out there, even major manufacturers, who aren't. And I really get the feeling that HDMI is sort of going, a little wrist slapping. Don't do that. Okay, we'll talk to you later. and they're coming out with it. So there's these companies that invested all this money in making it right, following the rules, and they're sort of getting run around.
No, they are.
And I don't know if this is a real issue or if everyone just sort of says, okay, we'll take both and we know where to put them. But there is an investment issue here based on the licensing agreement and its ability to be enforced.
Well, this is actually something that I've spent a lot of time on because I have a very good friend who works for a company who has spent a lot of time doing it right. And he and I have gone back and forth because when he first told me about this, I said I didn't believe him. And I didn't for a long time. I disagreed with him. I didn't think that the industry would stand for it. I didn't think the end user would stand for it. And so I actually sat down and I read not only the HDMI spec, but the HDCP spec and the AACSLA spec. And that was interesting reading. If you have trouble going to sleep at night, I suggest you curl up with it. But the bottom line is this. Yes, you need to worry about it. There are some rumblings and there are some wink, wink, nudge, nudges that they're going to come out with an HDCP Pro or an specification, which gives manufacturers the ability to pay a fee and then actively manage the keys themselves. So let's say you have a Blu-ray player and it has a key. It goes to Box A. And Box A is a switcher. So Box A is HDCP Pro. It is actively managing, so it's the one talking back to the Blu-ray player every 2 seconds, saying yes, I'm approved, I'm good, and then Box A talks to the display, and whether it's one display or 15 displays, that's Box A manufacturer's problem, and then it's his responsibility to then talk to the displays and make sure that they are HDCP compatible. So, yes, you need to worry about it, at least as far as the HDCP guys and the AACSLA guys are concerned. You still need to worry about it.
Then how are they allowing these key manufacturers, and you and I have seen a number of products like this that just, like George was saying, they just totally strip it, bypass it, convert it to analog, whatever the case may be. We've all seen those products. If they're not going to enforce it, what's going to come of HDCP?
And I think that there's a key statement you just made, though. It's key manufacturers. This is not just one-offs or a hack box that somebody broke the DVD code. These are some big players doing this.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I guess that's my thing is this is there was a post on some forum somewhere, and I apologize because I don't have the attribution, but it was a gorgeous analogy. The guy said he was an AV industry member, and he said when my dad was in during the 80s, he had to go back to school to learn how to build or deal with fuel injection. He had built carburetors and worked on cars his entire life. But then they came out with something called fuel injection, and building carburetors really wasn't part of the deal anymore. He had to learn something new. And I think that's a good analogy for going to digital and dealing with this content protection. The guys that are behind the content protection have a vested interest. I mean, these are the same yahoos that are going out there that are going to different countries and trying to get massive fines laid on people who are committing piracy. So that they are really, really bent on protecting their content. And I get that these guys should be paid. I'm not saying that piracy is a great thing. So so they're going to go after this in one way, shape, or form. And if we find ways around it, guess what? They're going to hire really smart people to find better ways to lock this down. And then we're going to be stuck with a single source and a single display system, which every AV industry person is cringing at that thought. Because, I mean, think about some of the greatest displays and some of the greatest AV installs you've ever seen. They are not ones and ones. They are these giant manufactured multi-screen display systems.
But who drives that market? You know, that market's not driven by the AV industry.
Which market?
The content protection. The people that are driving this initiative, it's the consumer industry that they're locking down. They're not concerned about the AV manufacturers and the AV professionals in the industry. They're concerned about the consumers that are copying content, that are doing it illegally, that are stealing the intellectual property. So, that particular segment of the electronics industry is much larger than what we're dealing with in the professional AV world. So our voice is not as loud.
No,
it makes it difficult.
But it affects us directly.
It does.
I mean, they are concerned, and again, rightfully so, with people copying their material. And so, yes, the consumer electronics industry is who they're focused on. Well, primarily, what is a consumer electronic system? It is one Blu-ray player and one TV. So that's all they care about. Does that make sense, George?
Yeah. I think it's an issue to be brought up because it's still out there.
Well, and that's one that we could hash over for hours on end. Just different trains of thought on that one. I mean, you take that all the way back to the VHS Betamax wars.
Well, and another question is how does technically the AACSLA are the governing body of the whole shebang. How do they police this? And I guess that's really where the question kind of devolves into. How are they going to police this? According to their guidelines, they're going to blacklist you. And there's a number of manufacturers. There was one that released one based on the HDMI 1.4 this year that was actively managing keys. Well, this is a group that had been a part of this whole group since 2004. So I don't believe that they're doing anything illegal. And so I guess some of it is doing some research and seeing where these guys are coming from. If right now 1.4 is not released to the public, the specification. So if in that specification it says, hey, you guys can actively manage, well then yeah, their boxes are perfectly quote unquote legal or within the guidelines of the specification. I just don't see somebody who's been involved with this whole thing for the last 7 or 8 years kind of chucking it and saying, what, forget you guys, we're gonna circumvent you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, to make a metaphor out of it, it's sort of like the copyright on product names. So, we say, you're going to Xerox something or you're going to do something I'm going to Google it. It could come down to the point where people just say, well, the ubiquity on the market is these boxes that don't even pay attention to it or subvert it are the mass market, and therefore you've now overwhelmed it and it has become standard because...
You're right. That may be what it comes down to. And if it does come down to that, I feel sorry.
It's a question of enforcement,
Yeah, I feel sorry for the companies that have spent millions of dollars doing it the right way.
Well, precisely my statement and question really at hand is where's the enforcement coming from, and how do we know that it's okay? I mean, just the HDMI sticker on the front doesn't mean that they followed the rules.
No, it
should
doesn't.
Mean it.
It should. And again, the only enforcement is the blacklist. It really is.
Right.
Right.
Another early episode introduced us all to Matt Scott and Johnny Mota. Here we discussed the Crestron analog trade-in system and their new policy whereby you can trade in old analog gear and get some digital stuff. And we kind of channeled Monty Python for a minute.
Finally, guys, this came across my desk this morning, and I don't know if I'm supposed to read this, but, it came across my desk, so what the heck. The Crestron transition from analog to digital, get up to 100% trade-in credit. That's right, I said 100% trade-in credit for all of you wonderful end users. Bring out your PVID, QM, and IM system into the digital age with the Crestron Digital Media. It's quick, easy, and highly profitable. So basically what Crestron is saying is this. Bring us your poor, your tired, your huddled mess of analog systems, and we'll give you brand spanking new digital. Johnny, are you going to call all your residential guys and say, hey, throw down, get rid of your VCR, and I'll bring you a Blu-ray player and a brand new digital media box?
Definitely. I got that email this morning, just like usual, I'm sure, and it's definitely one of those bring out your dead moments. I was talking to one of my clients the other day about how he has this huge distributed audio video system, PVids and such, that's completely Crestron, and how, very soon that's just going to be a big paperweight. And he looked at me with like the biggest stare of like, you're kidding. I just bought this, X amount of years ago. And I looked at him like, well, technology changes, every so often. And it's not something I did to fool you or whatever. It's just something that's happening. I'm making you aware that in about, say, a year or two, this is going to be obsolete and you're going to have no video content anywhere. And now that I see that, I have a chance to say, hey, remember the other day I was talking about this, and you were like, I don't want to pay for all this stuff. If he has the chance to take out that entire system and have up to 100% just like swapping out, and all I have to do is charge him the labor, I could see him. I mean, you would just be ridiculous, silly not to hop on that train. I mean, a little bit of labor, yeah, I get it, but seriously, if you can just trade a box for a box and a little bit of labor time, why wouldn't you not want to do that versus just having a bunch of equipment in a closet or wherever it may be that does nothing and you spent a buttload on it? I would be upset myself.
Well, absolutely. Or the other option is to just, throw it in a closet or throw it away and buy all brand new. Matt, is this something that not only House of Worship, but your other installations that you could bring to your customers? Because, I get the church market. Believe me, I do. I help our church out, and it's part of the conversation is cost and money and resources. But this is something you could take to them and say, okay, you know what? I get budgets, but here's something that you can do to upgrade your system from the old stuff that you have now and bring you more into a more modern age.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we're going to try and essentially leverage as much as possible, not only to, help us as a company, but also help our customers, because especially, as I'm sure you know, working with churches, a lot of times they're not going to drop, that entire system cost at once. They'll try and essentially almost do a piecemeal and, do a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here. So with this type of offer, it's something where hopefully we can go to a lot of our customers and clients like that and say, hey, we can help you upgrade this system right now, get you into essentially, the 21st century, with the latest and greatest stuff. And it will really, cost you pennies on the dollar when we're just talking labor rates. So it's something that, especially in the House of Worship market, I think can be used very, very effectively. And, major, props to Crestron for doing something like this, because it is extremely frustrating for both us as integrators and, our consumers when you buy something and within 2 years it's completely outdated. So, any time that we can help them upgrade and, just better their systems with minimal output for them is obviously better for everybody.
Michael, you do a fair amount of installations in the education market. And just like with the House of Worship, there are budgets, there are issues, and I get that. But is this something that, let's say that 3 or 4 years ago, you did a brand new installation? Technically, that system should still be viable. That system should be still robust and working. Is this something that you can take back to your college or university or K through 12 installation and say, hey, look, I know we just did this, but, here's some digital stuff. It'll work. I swear there's not going to be any changes.
3 or 4 years ago, try 3 or 4 months ago.
Okay.
I mean, we still have a number of clients that, you educate them about digital and the importance of it, but they say, we don't have the budget. Give me VGA. That's all I need right now. Let's move forward. So we do it. It's what the client wants. You educate them and you try to progress them with the technology. So now this kind of changes the game, because we can go back to those systems that we just deployed and say, hey, by the way, we can trade this stuff up now. Yeah. It's not going to look real good, but it's bringing some value to the customer. I'll be interested to see, though, how the other manufacturers follow suit, if they're going to follow suit. I think this is a brilliant marketing ploy by Crestron to get their product into many different client spaces. And I think that the competitive manufacturers are going to be amiss if they don't follow suit with some sort of program that's similar to this.
Okay, here's a stupid question. Who can follow suit? Because who's doing DM or something like DM?
Well, DM is not necessarily, they're not going to be capable of doing digital media, but there's no reason they can't offer upgrade programs from analog to digital systems. I mean, the E's and the A's and the other A's that are out there, definitely have the ability to say, hey, bring us your old VGA matrix and we're going to give you an SDI matrix, or we'll give you an HDMI matrix, whatever the case may be. So there are other ways to bring upgradable solutions on a trade-in program like this.
This next clip is where we talk to AV Dawn Mead, who is a great industry resource. She's heavily involved in Infocom, the organization. She wrote a blog post that encouraged us, as well as the entire industry, to preach it. Preach it. Go out there and proselytize the AV industry. Well, we discuss that along with her, and I discuss it with Kevin Iselli from Crestron and our buddy George Tucker. Dawn, you wrote a very cool, very interesting blog post on Rave Blogs. Why don't you go through it and tell us? It's entitled "Preach It, Brothers and Sisters, Preach It." What I gathered, and you can obviously correct me if I'm wrong, basically we still have an identity problem in the AV industry, and as much as your mom still thinks you sell TVs, and Richard Fregrosa a couple of weeks ago says that he's a VCR repairman.
Right.
So go ahead and kind of explain to us what you were thinking and the thrust of this post.
Well, the basic thought is, in 2009, Infocom celebrated its 70th anniversary, 7 decades of an association for the AV industry. The AV industry itself has been around since, when did they invent the record player? When did they invent, the very first recording media? That's really the birth of our industry. But when you tell people you work in the AV industry, you usually kind of get that glazed over eye look of, just total blank, and they have no idea what you're talking about. We don't have a degree program for an AV design engineer, AV installer, or anything in the United States. It was until Master Format 2004 before we even got a place of our own for AV specs and construction documents. So there's really just a real lack of information about our industry, despite the fact that we're everywhere. I mean, imagine waking up tomorrow with no AV, no mics, no speakers, no monitors on your computer, because that's a version of a TV screen or a monitor. That's all AV. And we're everywhere. People take it for granted, but they don't realize or recognize that we're a distinct industry. So, the gist of my post is, hey, people, it's obviously not gaining precedence in American people's mind just by being, they take us for granted. So you have to go out there and basically preach about what it is we do. You can't sell a system to a customer before you sell the industry. So I'm encouraging everyone in AV, if you have a chamber of commerce or a technology council, community organization for networking, offer to speak to them and talk about AV. Join Infocom, join NSCA, or even just go to their sites. They have a lot of free info on how to evangelize our industry. Get on LinkedIn or Twitter and become an AV tweep. We'd love to have you. The more of us that are out there making noise, the sooner people will understand what it is we do. And I'm in my 3rd year of a dual master's program at the University of Maryland right now. I finished the technology management part of the degree, and I'm on the MBA part. But I'm working with a bunch of IT people because there's no applicable AV degree. IT's as close as I could get with technology management. So, and even in my classes with my professors, I'm constantly telling them what it is we do. So, the best place to find a helping hand is at the end of your own arm, is the Swedish proverb that I sort of close the article with. And, nobody's out there helping us let our industry be known. We have to help ourselves and just talk about it. Just kind of be obnoxious, have fun, make friends, and let them know what AV is.
Well, let me ask, because when I read this, the first thing that I thought was, yes, we're everywhere. We're ubiquitous. And I think that's part of our problem. The fact that we have been around for so many years. Like you said, that the invention of the radio, of the record player and the radio, and anytime there's signals, there's audio and video going over the lines. We have been around forever, so we're everywhere, and yet that's part of the problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I call us the largest industry in the world that's a hidden industry, because people don't know we exist, but we're worth billions of dollars worldwide.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like in the music industry when I was a part of that. We were the greatest band you never heard of.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think the bigger challenge is, you're right, Don. There's no professional degree system out there that's going to give you an AV industry degree. The closest thing we've ever had is broadcast media, but that's just one facet. I mean, I'll throw out a number there that George probably will give him a little bit of a creeps. I lived my life in 16,790 for 20 years, right? So you're right. We've now made some advances in the industry with having our own master spec qualification. We still don't have, let's say, a notified degree program out there that tells people what our specialty is. And of course, because we don't have that, or that we don't have that kind of backing when you're dealing with other disciplines, let's say, we're always the first ones to get cut out of the project too.
Right.
Well, let me ask you something, because I've talked with a couple different integrators before, and these are guys that do the hiring and the firing. I'm a big proponent of education. I'm not doing a double master's like Dawn is. I'm doing a single one, a little more sane. But I've pitched that idea to them because I've talked with Infocom about doing stuff like that, and I work with colleges and stuff, and I have pitched the idea to different integrators. The comment that they said to me was, "We think you should do it. It's a great idea," because what in their mind, what would happen is you would flood the market with all this talent, which would drive down salaries, and so that, at least from their perspective, is a double-edged sword. Yes, it would give us a degree, and yes, it would give us some cachet that like the IT industry has, but are they right? Would it drive that? Would the flood of qualified, degreed engineers and designers put a damper and kind of drive down salaries and the income that not only the new guys are making, but also what the other current integrators are making?
I don't know if providing value to a discipline or providing value to a skill should drive anything down. We could have lots of conversations, and George could definitely back me on the support side of things, which we just won't go into.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Don. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I don't think it would, if it did drive down salaries, I think that would be in the long term. Mm-hmm. Because right now, people are commanding decent salaries in our field, the skilled and trained people. But at the same time, those integrators have to pay for their CTS classes and their CTSD classes. They have to not necessarily pay for them to do manufacturer training, but, if I go to a week to Crestron school or a week to Extron school or any other school for that matter, BIAMP on the West Coast, that's a week away from the office, a week of not being productive, and airfares and things. The manufacturers are great about providing sometimes accommodations, sometimes travel, depending on the manufacturer, but that's still costing our employers to give us the time to send us there for that training. So I think if there were a degree program that we could get independently, either undergrad or graduate, that would provide the skilled people in the marketplace without that extra expense to the integrator, and they could be able to pay them the same salary and relax because they don't have the extra expense of training.
That's a very good point. Go ahead, George.
I would just like it so that there's a degree so that when I ask the question of potential techs, that they don't tell me an audio XLR is left, right, and ground. As Kevin and I have discussed ad nauseum in basically getting support people into the phones at my former employer, it was really bad. I've been in the audio, 10 years. I've been doing specifically audio. Pro? Yes, pro. Okay, tell me how this works. Left, right, and ground. No.
Technically, it could be left, right, ground.
For pro audio?
Well, no, pro audio.
When you're a pro audio guy,
I'm just saying you could do it,
isn't it?
It's possible.
One of the things that we actually, because Crestron does have, a programming curriculum, we get that all the time. We don't have enough time to come to class. My boss won't send me. what we've actually seen documented, and let's say, well, I don't want to say documented, what we have proven is that those days that you spend in the classroom save you time in the job site.
Oh, yeah.
Without question.
Well, even more so, Kevin.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, even more so, Kevin. There was a time when there was a huge debate internally at Crestron as to whether to teach some of the basics, what tools to carry, what the basics of audio and RF are. And we found that you had to teach that as one of the prerequisites to the class because they came out going, all right, you told me how to do that, but I don't understand what it's working with.
Yeah, what's this left, right, and ground thing?
Yeah, exactly. We had some stuff like that. And this is not a dig at the people in the field because sometimes it's there you go, you're hired, get out there, do it. And there's something to be said for that as well, the apprentice method and just getting out there and getting your hands dirty. But yeah, I mean, it would be great to have that at all levels. I mean, Dawn, I think you're talking even a higher level at times about education. But I'd love to see that CTS or something similar as an educational foundation is real.
Right, and Infocom as an association is taking steps in that direction. They now have their totally free, no cost to the company or the individual. The Intro to AV class is completely free online. They have a couple of other courses that are free and webinars that are free online for some of the basic stuff. And they also now have a pre-CTS certificate that you can get. I can't remember off the top of my head the exact name for it, but basically it's saying I've gone through this coursework, I can do basic AV stuff, even though I'm not a CTS yet. And it's just sort of to get some of these off-the-street people to a basic level of competence before they go out and represent our industry. And it's needed desperately. So, good on Infocom for moving forward with that stuff because, none of the universities are doing it. We have to get out there and let people know about us so that someday they will. And I keep pushing, I'm on one of the Infocom committees. I keep pushing the board, talk to universities, get your face up in front of them, not just about the AV in their infrastructure, but about putting the AV in their curriculum, So
what's interesting,
we'll see how that goes.
From an education standpoint, colleges are... I'm going to get in trouble for saying this. Colleges are money-making institutions. I mean, regardless of whether it's a state university or it's a private college, they're not in the business to lose money. And so if they have a program, it's because they've done the research and they see a viable use for it. Part of what you're saying, Don, and I agree with you, is we need, as maybe an industry or as, integrators, say, hey, you have hired us to come in. Why don't you pursue doing some sort of, whether it's an associate's or a bachelor's or up to the graduate level, some sort of program to train people and educate them to where you create an AV degree.
Right.
So.
Absolutely. I mean, it's something that it's going to come eventually, but as people in the industry, we have to go out and spread the word and get the demand there. I've been in the industry for 15 years. Like most people, I totally fell into the industry by accident. I didn't grow up saying I want to be an AV when I grow up. I didn't even know that was a thing other than the guys with the slide projector at school, Yeah. So it's something we have to get out there and talk about. And some of our talking on Twitter and some of our blogging is starting to make headway. This year in Orlando, I actually met 3 people that were college students at the show just because they want a career in AV and wanted to see what there is.
That's awesome.
I was so excited. I was like jumping up and down excited when I met these kids. So we just need a whole bunch of people doing that, What do you want to be when you grow up, Timmy? I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be an AV tech, or an AV design engineer. That's where we want to go. So just preach it. Get out there and preach it.
I wanted to be a lumberjack.
Welcome back. This clip is where we talk with Gary Kay, Adrian Boyd, and Craig McCormick from Commercial Integrator Magazine about how pro, air quotes here, how pro is Monster Cable. From Jason Knott, Craig, your buddy Jason Knott wrote this. After 32 years, Monster Cable Products Incorporated has officially changed its name to Monster, and shortly thereafter filed suit against the Cookie Monster and Monster.com.
Yes.
I hate Monster Cables. I'm sorry. Craig, is this a big deal, or is this just some Yahoo high-end cable company changing their name?
I would say it's probably the latter, although I'm not sure I would describe it quite that way. I don't think it's a big deal at all. I think probably most people that who worked with them, most of their customers probably called them Monster anyway, and didn't realize their full name was Monster Cable Product anyway. I don't really think it's going to change anything. That it sounds like the purpose of it was to kind of make people aware that they sell more than cable products, and kind of expand their customer base. But I don't think it's going to change a whole heck of a lot, to be honest.
Gary, this is my perception, and I could be wrong. I don't get the perception that Monster is a pro AV cable guys. I mean, yeah, Jason wrote this in CE Pro, so it's more of a Resi kind of story. But I don't know. Every person I've ever talked to about Monster cables, from I say the fact that they filed suit against Cookie Monster and Monster.com tongue in cheek, but they have a history of just pissing people off by suing them because they're using the word Monster, and then their cables are in my opinion outrageously expensive. So does anybody in the industry really use them, or am I just jaded?
Well, you know what? The one thing you got to give them credit for is that they are a marketing company, not a manufacturer. They have marketed themselves into a position where you assume high quality with them, and I have to give them kudos. I mean, they are a good example of sort of marketing 101 on how to market your brand, because people will go in and instead of buying the $11 6-foot HDMI cable that is branded by Best Buy, or even the $30 gold version of the Best Buy cable, they'll buy the Monster one for $60 because it has the Monster brand next to it. So it's better branding through marketing, and hey, if they can do it, more power to them. I have nothing against. If you can charge whatever you want to charge, you should be able to charge whatever you want to charge, regardless of the quality, because the best product isn't always the market-leading product, but sometimes it's the better marketing. I mean, Bose sells a hell of a lot of audio systems to people because they have a much better marketing position than most other manufacturers of the same type of stuff.
Agreed.
So, I mean, that's why I look at it, as I see them as, I have to give them credit for being a marketing company. I mean, they are not a manufacturer, and they're not creative in their manufacturing. They're very good at marketing their products and branding them such that you assume there's quality related to them. Car manufacturers do it all the time. I mean, people pay more money for cars just because of their brand. So.
Yeah, and there's a number of Monsters products that, they don't make them, then somebody else makes them, and they just slap their name on it. There's a lot. We have a lot of manufacturers that do that. So, they do our marketing. I mean, if you've ever sat down with the owner of Monster and listened to one of his seminars, it is it's marketing, and they're really good at what they do.
After CEDIA this year, Sarah Abrams from Rave Publications, Rich Fregosa, Matt Scott, and Phil Cordell all sat down for a recap of CEDIA, as well as to introduce us to the Esky.
So you have people coming from very, very different walks of life into the ESC market these days.
The what now?
CEDIA has requested we no longer refer to ourselves as custom installers in a way to kind of branch out who we are and what we do. We now do tend to refer to ourselves as ESCs, Electronic Systems Contractors.
So you're an ESC.
I'm an ESC. I'm an ESCI.
You're an ESCI. An ESCI. Okay. Phil, are you an ESCI? Oh, go ahead.
That's what NSCA has been calling its members.
Is ESCIs?
ESCs, yeah.
ESCIs. It sounds like a basketball team from the Big Ten.
Or some form of award.
Yeah. Thank you for this ESCI. I'd like to thank all the little people. Phil. Go ahead.
Yo.
How was your experience at CEDIA?
It was great, man. Apart from the identity confusion, I think we're all trying to find ourselves now in this ESC world.
Matt, what was one product or something that you saw that kind of jumped out at you?
The biggest thing that I saw, was definitely the Lutron shade. And I am a Lutronite. I'm a huge Lutron fan, so I'm probably slightly jaded. But to me, that was probably the biggest thing. The concern I have with seeing like the 4K projectors, as cool as they are, we still don't have any content for it. So I can't get overly excited about something that is going to be really, really hard for me to sell. It reminds me the same as when we first got Blu-ray players in Canada. There was like 6 different discs in the entire country that we could get. So it was like, all right, buy this really expensive, cool new thing, but you're not going to have anything to watch on it for quite a while. And, I know a lot of that is just Canada and whatnot, but for me, the biggest thing was definitely the Lutron shade. And the reason I say that is because, it's not insanely, that revolutionary in the sense that it's, it's another motorized shade. It is a cell shade. I don't know if anyone else is actually making cellular motorized shades at this point, but the biggest thing to me is that not only is it a motorized shade that's $299, it's a wireless motorized shade that's $299.
Actually, I have a question for you, Matt, about those as an integrator. The $299 version is actually the one they're going to be selling retail?
That's a retail cost.
And
it's an.
Well, I was curious if, as an integrator, you feel any concern about the fact that motorized wireless shades are now a product available to, like, online or in Home Depot to your customers.
I'm not really, because it's not something that too many people are going to go and get themselves. Mm-hmm. It's the same as the fact that you can technically go buy, a URC MX 450 or something like that, which is one of the, entry-level remotes that we occasionally will stock. You can go buy that anywhere. You can go buy a Harmony. And yeah, there's always going to be people who are going to try and do what we do themselves, and more power to them. It is good for the industry because it just brings more awareness. But the difference will be is they may get those shades, and even if they go to the Home Depot and buy 3 of those shades and get them with the little, basic IR remote, that's great. Because down the road when they look at it and, they're looking at another shade, or they got the brochure and they go, oh, I can integrate this with all my lighting. Well, I don't think I have the lighting to do that, but that would be really cool. And then they're going to call someone like me or, any other ESC.
Yeah, we do.
ESC, everybody stay calm. It's okay. Things are changing, but it's okay. So,
all right.
anyway.
So explain this. You guys keep using this, and I've already forgotten. What does ESC stand for again?
Electronic Systems
Contractor.
As opposed to?
Marble contractor?
No. What did you call yourselves before?
Custom installer.
It used to be the CI market.
CI market. Now it's
installation.
Electronic Custom Systems? What was it again?
ESC.
Electronic
Just call us. I still refer to myself as the VCR repairman. So there we go.
You know what? I can remember that.
I got a little something. I do, Tim.
Oh, yes. Hang on.
All right. Here we go. Tim and AVWeek bring the savoir-faire. We're busting out discussions, this and that, what, where. Dropping true insights, and that stuff's rare with Rave Pub's Uncle Richie and Matt Scott's hair.
Nice.
Very nice.
There's no way to follow that.
Finally, we will end with probably one of our biggest interviews of the year, or one of our biggest panels of the year. Sam Malik from Sanyo joined us and joined our panel, actually. He stuck around for the entire show to talk about the Panasonic Sanyo projector line and what that means here in the near future, and what that means for Sanyo. The reason we even started with my conversation with Sam this week, again, Sam is the vice president and general manager of Sanyo, the display division. Gary Kay, who is a pretty good friend of the show, had on his blog on the site this week on Rave Publications a scoop, according to Gary, where he said that Panasonic, who had purchased a majority stake and then ended up buying the whole thing of Sanyo earlier this year, was shuttering Sanyo. And to use Gary's words, specifically, basically says that for the most part, the Sanyo folks will all need to find jobs. And so I reached out to Sam and said, hey, Sam, here's this thing. Would you be willing to come on and talk about it? Would you be willing to go back and forth and kind of explain exactly what's happening with Sanyo and with Panasonic? So that's what we're going to do. And Sam's going to hang around and put his 2 cents on a couple of things. So Sam, what is kind of going on with Panasonic and Sanyo?
Well, Gary published his scoop, and I think he had a momentary imagination that he was suddenly CNN or TMZ or something like that. And the scoop wasn't that much of a scoop, and there were some inaccuracies. I mean, he announced that, Panasonic and Sanyo were coming together, and that's true. Panasonic did acquire Sanyo. They bought half the company a year ago. They completed that last March. And so we've been in transition mode of planning, how to bring these two companies together. And just to clarify some things, Panasonic's paid $8 billion for Sanyo. So I mean, it's a chunk of cash. And the main reason they did that was for hybrid car batteries and for solar panel business. So they now have a 97% market share with the combined two companies. But, after hybrid batteries and solar panels, then there's all these ancillary businesses after the fact, one of them being projectors and flat panel displays that, our combined business is maybe $200 or $250 million when you combine Sanyo and Panasonic together. And we're kind of a little bit farther down on the list. But regardless, that was announced a year ago. There's been a number of smaller announcements about how Panasonic plans to have a single brand strategy and bring that all together. And apparently, Gary Kay woke up, and I like Gary Kay. He's well known in the industry. I'm very familiar with Rave. Sanyo was a sponsor of some of his webpage findings and things like that. But it was kind of frustrating, his scoop that he put out there, because he's like, Panasonic's going to totally eliminate the Sanyo brand by April. Well, we're transitioning together by April 2012, and there's a whole process that's involved with that. So it's not being totally eliminated. Actually, in the Middle East, Sanyo will continue to exist for at least another year while we wrap up some contracts and things like that. It is true that we will go to a single brand strategy, which is Panasonic's brand name, April 1st, 2012. And it looks like the majority of our people have the opportunity to go over to Panasonic or at least interview with Panasonic and integrate with their team. There is they have a certain go-to-market strategy. We have a go-to-market strategy, and when you combine the two together using Japanese math, 2 + 2 = 2.5. So our goal is to at least have one, try to get it to equal at least 2 overall, 1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah.
Anything beyond that, I think, is upside and bonus. But we have 2 different strategies. We're trying to bring them all together, and certainly our people will be part of that combined team going forward. So, while Gary's a good industry guy and well respected, he was a little bit off and maybe a little negative in his scoop. But, like I said, he had grandeur of being TMZ one day. So, I think he got a little bit ahead of himself.
Well, a couple questions real quick. And if you don't feel comfortable answering that, that's fine. A couple of things. You talk about that Sanyo and Panasonic's going to go under one roof in April. What is the difference, or is it simply contractual? Why in the Middle East it wouldn't? Why the delay in putting the Middle East brand under?
Good question, Tim. It's absolutely contractual. There's a number of government bids that we had been awarded, and there's a certain quantity and timing for them to implement those projects. So we have to fulfill those contractual agreements. We can't just walk away from them without penalty.
Okay, here, and you, I am my main thing is I'm an end user, and I will say that to the world. I'm not an integrator, so I don't have the relationships that integrators have. I don't have the headaches, and I don't understand the ins and the outs. Why not keep both brands? Again, as an end user, and my main thing is education and house of worship. Sanyo is beloved in both of those markets, where Panasonic isn't necessarily hated, but it's almost like Panasonic is. There's the perception that they are a another tier like, a Christie or a Barco. And so there's a price associated with that. And when you're talking about house of worship and you talk about education, money matters when it comes to those two markets. We have a finite budget, and Sanyo has always been there for those two markets. So I guess my curiosity is why they would not throw away, but not dismiss, because those are two very harsh words, but they wouldn't necessarily keep those factors in mind when they're saying, hey, let's bring these guys together.
No, I think that's an excellent question, Tim. I work on the committee to integrate these two businesses. So there's myself and a few people on the Sanyo side, and the same equal number on the Panasonic side. So for the last year, we've been working on these issues, and certainly being loyal to Sanyo, we saw it that way as well, is that there's a lot of legacy customers, end user customers who love our product, who are very loyal to our product. They know it's extremely reliable and fits their needs, and they'd like to continue buying it. That's great, but, being that we're on the receiving end of this opportunity, that's the nicest way I can say it. They paid $8 billion, and they can name it whatever they want.
That's true. And again, I'm not gonna give them back their $8 billion, so I can name it what I want.
So, if you look back in history, and this is one of the points we used in our argument, as we just tried to help decide what was the best thing going forward. If you look back to the Infocus acquisition of Proxima 10, 12 years ago, Proxima was extremely dominant and did very well in the Pro AV channel. Infocus had, business plans to expand into the IT side and the retail side. And even if you talk to those former Infocus executives today, they probably said they would have did it differently and kept Proxima alive and operated both brands to maximize their impact to the market. And, that's kind of a similar situation that we're in, is that Panasonic does very well. They have a very loyal customer base for their 3-chip DLP and a lot of their other products. And on the flip side, Sanyo has kind of a completely different customer base that's very loyal and likes the products we build. And so we saw it as the best of both worlds to just operate independently. But, they have an overall corporate strategy from Japan on down, and that's to be a Panasonic, corporation, and everything is branded Panasonic to help build sales of other products. They have Toughbook and security and flat panel displays and everything. So they want that brand to be associated at all levels. So that's their decision. That's why they went with Panasonic only. But real good question, good point, and we felt the same way, but we lost the argument in the end.
Well, and one real quickly, because this will kind of dovetail into our next article. You and I talked earlier about the distribution model, I guess is the best way to get into this, because Sanyo is a manufacturer direct to dealer model, correct?
Correct.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so we sell through distribution, but that's a small part of our overall sales revenue. We have 475 direct dealers. So we market directly to the dealers who deliver to the end user, whereas Panasonic's model is entirely through distribution. They said, look, we're a manufacturer. We build stuff and bring it to market. We're not good at logistics, so we're going to use distribution as our logistics, or as they refer to it as pick, pack, and ship. Mm-hmm. And that's great, but those distributors for the most part are IT channel companies, and they really don't understand the display industry very well or deeply. When they go into a higher education type environment and what they need and how it has to interface and how the professors want to use it and that type of thing. Whereas because we have the direct model, direct to dealers, we're directly linked into their sales. We join them on sales calls and we help drive those environments. So, the model is, do you go to distribution? Is that a good way to use those guys as a warehouse for shipping and fulfilling orders? And, what does it cost you in the end is the question.
I have a question because I'm not an integrator, but I have a good friend of mine who is. He and I were talking about your and I's conversation about the distribution portion, because I had questions for him. He made the comment that when you go to a distribution model, you are eliminating some of that, not cachet, but not, and you are eliminating the relationship, but you're also eliminating some of that market exclusivity.
Actually, he said, now anybody can get it. It was his exact statement. And I said, really? He said, yeah. Now, because when you go to a distribution model, the distributors don't know you, and so they'll sell the Panasonic or whatever it is that they're distributing to anybody. Is that valid? Is that an accurate argument?
Yeah, it really is. If you look at one of the largest distributors is Ingram Micro. They're an IT distributor, been around a long time. They carry 500,000 SKUs.
Wow.
So I offer, my current lineup is 52 projectors. So I have 52 SKUs out of 500,000 SKUs, and they have probably 600 to 1,000 salespeople. So nobody there knows anything about Sanyo projectors. They don't know which lens goes with which product and what brightness you need, and at what point do you mount it, and the difference between XGA and WXGA. You're not getting any of that. Where we feel that a Pro AV dealer, somebody we have a direct relationship with, we train them on a regular basis. The ones that they choose their product line, whatever brand it may be, whether it's Sanyo, Panasonic, NEC, Mitsu, whatever, and then they become very loyal to that brand. We have that connection. They're an extension of our sales force and of our factory. They're hooked up directly. When you go through distribution, unless they're a specialty distributor, there's a couple of them out there like International Audiovisual, IAVI down in Florida, Almo, ALMO in Pennsylvania. Those are specifically Pro AV distributors, and all they do is display gear and the related equipment. So the micro tiles and the audio systems and the switchers, Extron or AMX or Crestron, they do all of that. And so they're very specifically knowledgeable to our industry, and they can recommend the right products. They don't carry 500,000 SKUs. They might carry 1,000 SKUs, which is considerably less, and they're experts in the products that they sell.
They know the SKUs, though.
They know the SKUs. I mean, you can go in and question them, and they know them. Almost any brand, even if it's not one they represent, they know what it offers, what it does, the pluses and minuses, et cetera. Whereas if you go to an Ingram Micro Tech Data, good luck, to find somebody.
Can I ask a follow-up question to this, though? Because this kind of brings up a conversation, one of the podcasts that we had maybe a month or two ago, in that, one of the issues, and again, I'm coming from primarily the residential side. Tim and Matt kind of deal with the higher ed, and Matt kind of straddles both lines. But one of the conversations that we've been having is the eroding profit margins, especially with video. And when you went from dealer direct, you have one profit center that you're dealing with. By going to, introducing that distribution model at that point, even though they're specialists and they can help you and work your way through, aren't you at that point eliminating the need for a dealer to want to stay with that line at that point? Because they're going, well, great, you just did this deal that's great for you, but really what's happened is I just lost money right now. I'm sure your product's great, but I've now just eliminated even more of my profitability. How is that going to be addressed?
You're absolutely correct, because when you go through a distributor, the distributor is expecting to make just in round numbers, anywhere between 5 and 10% profit margin for distributing that product. So that's additional markup that has to come from somewhere. A lot of times it comes out of the dealer's margin, and the dealer, the one that interfaces with the end user, needs to make a certain level of profit to be able to put a truck on the street, somebody to go out and install it, a salesman to sell it, to get the right product to them, to put it in stock and pay for the inventory. So there were some profit erosions. And Tim, to go back to your comment earlier, when it's available in distribution and anybody can buy it, that also kind of erodes the loyalty for certain people to recommend or sell those products, because once somebody gets a quote, let's say they're going to do a home theater and it's $5,000 to put a nice home theater in their house, with sound system, and they can go a lot more than that, of course. But first thing people do is take that quote and go out and shop it on the internet and see how cheap they can buy it. Yeah. And they start to pick it apart. And then at that point, where a dealer really should be earning $500 or $1,000 to install something, they might be looking at making $150, and they can't stay in business with no margin. So these are a lot of the factors of distribution. Panasonic has an authorized dealer model that they implement, so not everybody can buy their product at distribution. You have to be a pre-authorized dealer in order to be able to buy the product. And a lot of manufacturers, I think, are implementing that type of policy to kind of control the flow and try and maintain some pricing in the marketplace.
That does at least help curb some of those concerns that some of the integrators have. So,
right.
If I could cut in just for 1 sec, what my company does a lot of times is, we deal a lot with distribution. Distribution's been very good for us. I do understand, both aspects of it, and we do have some companies that we're direct with. But I guess my question to you, Sam, is if distribution is so bad, and again, I use that very lightly, I don't completely understand in the argument of, a customer, an end user price, shopping everything. They're going to do that anyways, whether they're buying a product that's distribution or direct, because the products are out there. In projectors, a lot of times, even if we spec something that is harder to attain, a lot of customers, or end users, I should say, are going to go to something like, Projection Pros and find a comparable model, whether it's, in our eyes comparable or not, and still come back with that same point.
Yeah, the end users aren't usually aware of, distribution and whether product's distributed or not.
Right.
So they're blind to that. But there's a lot of not good quality companies, let's call it that way, that they take the electronic feed off of the distributors, let's say an Ingram or a Tech Data. Their computers automatically get the feed on the SKUs they've checked off. They mark it up 2%, and then it automatically posts it to their web page. They don't stock it. Many times they don't sell it. If you order that, if you order product ABC, they'll take your order and your credit card, and then a month later tell you it's not available and try and ship you a CD&E instead that they do make some margin on. So there's a lot of low-level guys doing bait and switch type stuff. Then there's a lot of legitimate dealers that, integrators or dealers that, do sell the product. They try and make a reasonable margin, and that's not to gouge the end users, but to make a profit that it takes to support, install it, and then be there for the customer after the fact a year later, And most consumers don't realize, what it takes to support a professional installation, after the fact, that you've got to have some profit back there so that you're around to do that a year later.
Right.
They just look at your quote, it includes installation. They pick the biggest item on the quote and then go out and shop it on the internet and go, oh, I can get that on eBay or Amazon for $200 less.
Yeah.
That's a no support product. As long as you know what you're doing, you can install it yourself. Great, have at it, and I wish you the best of luck. But if you want it to be supported and somebody to answer your call if you got a problem, you better buy it from a reputable dealer.
It doesn't matter the fact that Panasonic is spelled with a K at the end.
Just like Sony, I swear.
It's a Rolex, sell you two for 100. So, all right. Well, thank you much for listening. Have a safe and happy holiday season from my family, from the AVNation family, and from myself personally, Tim Albright. Thank you so much for helping to make AVNation what it is. Please have a Merry Christmas and a safe and happy New Year.